to introduce the Chiron archetype. This morning I've been sitting with Rumi.
Oh, perfect.
And, instead of writing things down and thinking things through, and I just really wanted to connect with the essence. So there's this one poem that Rumi wrote where he says, "The cure for the pain is in the pain. Stretch your arms and take hold of your clothes with both hands. The cure for the pain is in the pain. Good and bad are mixed. If you don't have both, you don't belong with us." And it also reminds me of this concept or this teaching that nirvana and samsara are the same thing. I think Chiron really holds this really special consciousness or intelligence wherein our relationship to self and our experience of being here gradually becomes not about being perfect, not about this place that we've reached where everything's taken care of and we have no problems, no wounds, no issues. But in fact, we can always find that on one level of perception, there's always, quote-unquote, something wrong with us. There's always some sort of wound. There's always something that, can't quite get resolved. And there's this alchemy that happens with Chiron where we don't heal the wound. We don't make it go away. We don't fix it, but we actually embrace it. And this is something that's spoken of often, that the process or the healing of Chiron is this homeopathic experience where we actually go into it itself. We go into the pain. We go into the wound. And that itself creates its own transformation. And so we'll speak about some of the different expressions of Chiron and what this can look like. But I want to share another little poem. I studied with Adam Gainsbourg some years ago, and he actually wrote a book on Chiron. And I remember somewhere in that book he quotes Wendell Berry, and I just looked up the poem this morning. "To go in the dark with a light is to know the light. To know the dark, go without sight, and find that the dark too blooms and sings, and is traveled by dark feet and dark wings." And I love that. To know the dark, go dark. So,
where did you say that you found that, Ari?
On Google. I first came across that from Adam Gainsbourg.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
And on Adam's, I think on his Skype handle, he has this quote: "Feel everything, believe none of it." And that's also, very, very Chironic kind of statement. So let me see where I want to go with this.
I just wanted to comment too on what you said about what Rumi within his poem, the cure for the pain is in the pain. That's really powerful just in itself. But just in terms of what we naturally do, I think as humans, anybody would want to avoid the pain, right, at all costs. And when we don't deal with things head on and we hold on to them, right, we repress what we must address, then, as Jeffrey used to say, everything we repress becomes distorted. And I've used this example before. It's like pushing a ball underwater, like a beach ball. You can only control it for so long before it darts out. And so, we all have wounds, obviously, within us that we even kind of keep under lock and key. We don't want to go there and necessarily reopen that. But with the Chiron transit in particular, too, it's going to bring us toe-to-toe. It's a nice little Chiron and Pisces expression. Toe-to-toe with what's unfinished or not been attended to. So anyway, thank you for that Rumi poem. I thought that was perfect.
And so that's it. Chiron can really show up for a soul as pointing to this deep sense of there's something wrong with me. I'm wounded in some sort of fatal way. I like the way Rose Marcus has spoken about it. She's often talked about Chiron as a chronic condition. This word chronic is something that won't go away. And even I've often heard of the analogy of the archer with one arm. And so on one level, it can look like, how can I do this work? How can I move forward and follow this calling and do my work? Or, let's say, 7th house, be in relationship. 9th house, be a teacher. 3rd house, write. 12th house, have a relationship with God, know where I am, have a sense of direction in life. 1st house, make choices, be a leader. How can I do any of that when there's this very tangible sense of being wounded? And sometimes that woundedness is purely internal, purely on the psychological level. Of course, everything manifests on the physical at some point. But also sometimes that woundedness is a very tangible physical condition. I've noticed often that souls with strong Chiron in their chart will often manifest an actual, you might call it a disability or some sort of physical impairment or mental, an actual tangible impairment that inhibits movement the way other people might be able to move. This movement can be physical movement or mental movement or whatever it might be, psychological movement. And that creates a sense of differentness, right? It almost like noticing that that wound or that impairment creates an ongoing, never-ending, perpetual sense of I'm different, I'm different, I'm different. And that can be incredibly debilitating to a soul, because that differentness on one level can just simply point out the fact that I can't do what other people can do. And this is where within Chiron there can be a strong comparison that happens. Looking at what other people can do, looking at other people's seeming abilities, and feeling inherently flawed, feeling incapable. And the way that works is when we put our attention to our differentness, or when we put our attention to the places that feel chronic within us, and we allow that to take on the meaning that there is something wrong with us, then we create that reality for ourselves. We literally prove it. So I have Chiron. Chiron is actually I think, aspecting more planets in my chart than anything else. I have Chiron in the 9th house, and I remember once, I think it was the first talk I ever gave, the first astrology talk I ever gave, like 4 years ago or something. And as I was giving the talk, I think the moon, Mercury or the moon, something very simple, was transiting over my Chiron, and I was aware of it. And as I was giving the talk, I had this moment of just feeling like a complete fraud. And I was standing there in front of a group of people. I talked after a bunch of other experts in their field. It was like this New Age expo. And I felt like a complete fraud. And it was a very Chiron moment for me, because the sense of there's, Chiron in the 9th house can really be this core wounding around, I can't know the truth, I can't understand, I don't have the answers. And what could happen with Chiron anywhere is when there's a sense that there's something wrong or there's something I'm wounded with, if we're not really opening our heart to that, we can overcompensate as a result of that. So I remember in that talk that I gave, because I felt so incapable, I think inept is the word, I overcompensated. And I felt it in my body, this trying to make myself seem like I knew. Because deep within, I didn't believe that I knew. Yeah. And the funny thing is, there is knowing. But that knowing isn't this belief, or this knowing isn't this concept of knowing that I think I'm supposed to have, or, the knowing is a very intimate knowing that's inside of me. And so there's no way I can access and share that knowing if I'm ignoring my pain. Because if I ignore the pain, I am not walking through that door that will take me to the richness that is within me. So Chiron in every position, and this is why a lot of people think of Chiron as an initiator. And Rose Marcus has also spoken about Chiron as associated with shamanic initiation. And I resonate with just the imagery of that, or the idea that it takes us into this deeper realm within ourselves. And initiation usually means we're facing some sort of test or some sort of trial or some sort of impasse that is really hard for us to move through.
Mm-hmm.
But when we walk through that doorway, when we connect to that place within ourselves, we find this richness that we could not have found if that pain wasn't there, if that parent wound wasn't there in the first place.
You know, I always, I've never heard of Chiron as an initiator, but I'm reflecting about it. I can so see, it's so resonant, really. And I oftentimes, in talking with clients, will, when they're undergoing some sort of pressure to evolve or to move or to make a big change, you know, just when the pain becomes greater than the fear.
Yeah.
Because the fear creates a freeze, right? A resistance. And all those other negative emotions like doubt, insecurity. And so, but when the pain of not moving, right, not walking through the door becomes greater, we move. The pain will push us through, like you said. Perfect. So it all is so resonant, the way you speak even to Chiron. That was great.
Yeah. So, you know, to speak about Chiron right now is in Pisces and in gestation direct just a few weeks ago. And so when any planet stations direct, that archetype is sort of gaining momentum. And there's an opportunity to really integrate and embrace it more consciously and to resolve dynamics that perhaps were on hold for a while. And so Chiron in Pisces really, to me, fundamentally is about our relationship to Source, and where there might be collectively a sense of I am not close to Source. I am incapable of having a relationship with the divine. And it can bring up this deep sense of separation. You know, Chiron really has a strong resonance with Virgo, and to me it also really has a strong resonance with Sagittarius, and also with Cancer. You know, it's not one, everyone has different perspectives, but when I feel into it, it's, you know, Virgo's a strong part of it, but not in its entirety to me. But the psychology of lack is definitely a part of Chiron, and that's definitely connected to Virgo. And that lack simply being the sense of I can't do it, right? I can't walk with God. And Pisces is about co-creation. So there's a little story that I want to share that I wrote about and spoke about in my talk on Chiron and Pisces. We have a woman who is sitting next to this beautiful carboy of water, 3-gallon glass jug of beautiful well water, and water itself symbolizing Pisces. And all she needs to do is get a cup and drink water. You know, turn the thing and let the water flow out, and she'll drink it. She has a deep yearning for this water, and so the first thing she does is she's praying to the water. I want to be quenched. I'm thirsty. Come and fill my cup. And she prays and she prays and she prays, and the water isn't coming to her. And she begins to doubt, perhaps I'm not pure enough. Perhaps I'm not fit. I'm not ready enough to drink this water. And so she begins looking, what do I need to do in order to be worthy of this grace? She starts looking at other people that are drinking water. And there are two things that can happen here. The pain and the fear of not being able to drink. And of course, in this analogy, we're looking at not being able to really know God, to have a relationship, to have a sense of direction. Within Pisces, either we're making it up or we're following the will of the higher self. We're following the guidance of Source. And there's a huge difference between walking through life and making decisions from our own sense of separation, or making decisions from a sense of connection where we're actually co-creating with the divine. And so she might pretend that she is enlightened. She might pretend that she has found God, that she has drinking water, and she'll walk around as if she has drunken water, but really she's incredibly thirsty. Really she has not actually quenched her thirst, but to accept that she has not quenched her thirst might be so devastating to her. And so she can then, Pisces, spiritualize everything and talk about the water is everywhere, and she tastes it in everything, but really deep within, she's still missing God. She's still missing that water. Or we can go into something that I call swimming in the emotion. And this is really resonant with Pisces. Identifying with the wound so deeply that we create this idea or this belief that we cannot actually heal. So really identifying with a sense of I can't do it. I'm not loved. I can't be met by God. I can't do it. It's never going to happen. There's something wrong with me. And it's a sort of giving up and a falling into futility and hopelessness. There's another form of overcompensation where the soul can actually, and this is, I'll talk more about this in the next segment, but this is where the soul can really create a lot of pain for themselves and for other people, where they take their sense of disconnect and their sense of aloneness. I won't find God. I won't really, I can't have a relationship of sorts. And they'll use it as a way to create more separation. It's like, I'm wounded, so let's all be wounded. And we'll talk more about that after the break.
All right, we'll be right back. All right, we are back. I'm here with Ari Moshe, arimoshe.com. For those of you who are interested in checking out this school he's going to be doing, is awesome. A very cool place in Portland, starting in January, the 23rd. You can read more about that on the website. Okay, so back to you.
Okay. So this idea of creating wounding for other people, it really, on one level, can arise out of this deep sense of, like, if we're all fucked up, then I'm feeling okay about myself. And so specifically with Chiron and Pisces, to create a reality of nihilism or meaninglessness, or to do something where I can really believe in this reality that will then alleviate my sense of being far from source. And if I can create that for other people. So it can be a wounding for other people in terms of disappointing their hopes, disappointing their faith, or shattering their faith in there being something more meaningful and special. And there can really be a numbness that happens where a soul just turns off and, loses that connection to there being something greater and loses compassion, loses empathy. So one thing that Jeff Green taught a lot about is that Chiron really does represent where there has been not just peak traumatic and wounding experiences for the soul, but where the soul has created wounding for others. And thus, this can represent where a soul in the current life can experience guilt. And this guilt can then lead to a pattern of masochism. That masochism basically being a situation where the soul holds back from doing the work that they're here to do. And they'll create situations or embrace circumstances where they're sacrificing themselves or hurting themselves or denying themselves basic needs or anything that basically deepens their sense of woundedness and that there being something wrong with them. It's important to understand that sometimes that's a phase of healing, because if we've done something in the past that has been a natural violation of truth, if we've acted out of in a way that is not natural, and we've hurt other people, and that will naturally create guilt for any soul that is evolving and becoming self-aware. And so oftentimes that guilt will lead to a sense of denial and wanting to keep ourselves low in the psychology of inferiority, of course. And so that guilt will then also perpetually become an agonizing reality, because simultaneously while we're holding ourselves back from doing our work and living our purpose, because really Chiron is a gift that we're here to give. So while we're holding ourselves back from that, it becomes debilitatingly painful, because we're not being us. We're not living in relationship to source. We're not connecting to who we truly are. We're denying our life. And thus that, it's a funny, and it's just so beautiful the way the human psychology works and how it's set up. Because as we deny ourselves who we are, and as we deny ourselves our purpose and our calling, it hurts more. And as it hurts more, we might even become even more masochistic. And as we become more masochistic, our life falls more and more apart. And it gets to a point where we just have to surrender to it. It gets to a point where we just become so aware of how much it hurts that denying it, running away from it, overcompensating from it, doing all kinds of things that protect us from actually feeling the pain becomes so effortful that all we can do is just go into it. All we can do is just surrender to it and allow it. So this is what brings forth what I feel is a deep compassion, because we've accepted this place within ourselves that we don't like. We've accepted this place within ourselves that perhaps we held a lot of inadequacy or that there's something wrong with us. And we didn't heal, that we didn't change something, we didn't make ourselves better. We actually just accepted what we are. We bridged the gap. And so that always brings a lot of compassion, because we can then see other people in their pain. We can see other people, and it doesn't have to be the same kind of pain that we experience or the same kind of condition. It's anyone who is experiencing a chronic wound. We can recognize it and see their wholeness. We can see that their pain doesn't disqualify their wholeness. And Adam Ginsberg oftentimes, and this is a rough quote, describes Chiron as like a chronic or a perpetual pattern of believing oneself to be fatally wounded in some way. And it's like that chronic pattern of believing oneself. And just on the other side of believing that is this deep sense of, oh my God, thank you, this is so beautiful, like this quality. Now, these wounding experiences that I've had, or this physical condition, whatever, if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be who I am today. This unique gem wouldn't have come forth. And so this perception of woundedness, it transforms, it doesn't exist as a wound anymore. It's not seen as that. It only is seen as that from the psychology of resistance. So, let me talk a little bit here about the natal chart. Whenever I work with Chiron in counseling and I bring it up, I think pretty much every time Chiron comes up, it's always a sensitive place. There's almost not one case where it's brought up and I don't experience either denial or total acknowledgement and empathy. Usually there's some tears. When there's denial, it just simply means that individual in that moment or at that time isn't ready to look into those places. And this is sort of like the Virgo side of it. I don't want to look at it, so I'm going to, if I point something out and I'm uncomfortable, if you're uncomfortable with what I'm pointing out, then the response can be, no, there's nothing wrong with me, or being so critical of oneself to begin with that to receive any kind of acknowledgement of one's issues would just be too much. But very often I just see this great emotional resonance with Chiron. And so the house sign aspects to Chiron really point out where there's this intimate path that we get to walk in this life. And there are two things that I want to say about this path. It creates an aloneness. There's no way around it. There's definitely an aloneness that has to be experienced here, because it sets us apart. And to find other people that can resonate with us, to find other people that can get us, we're only stepping outside. And not to say we can't have compassion, support, but to really to put off our healing until we can find validation is to just put off our healing. Because the validation through Chiron is only one that can come from within. And so the quality of aloneness is really big, and that often perpetuates that sense of, I don't fit in, there's something wrong with me, I can't quite do this. So the aloneness element is part of it, and linked to the aloneness is a comparison. So we become aware of what we can do and look at what other people are doing. And it can lead to this pattern of trying to, this is something that I found a lot with Chiron, trying to fit in, trying to appear as normal. And it's very different than a Uranian, like, I don't want to stand out from the crowd. It's more like, I don't want to face my own, fatal aloneness and vulnerability and weakness. So I'm going to try to normalize myself as much as possible. And really there's a maverick. People often talk about Chiron as a maverick, that you bring something forth that is completely unique to you. And so I'll start looking at certain chart scenarios and we come back after the break. All right, we're back here with Ari Moshe. What a great show so far. I mean, this is just powerful material, and what I love so much, I mean, it's so naturally supports and aligns with, just the deeper work of EA anyway, right? Yeah. Just getting into it, getting into the corners and exposing the truth and being ready for it, I suppose. Yeah. And I just feel like anybody who does get into EA is someone who's ready for it, because you don't gallivant on the surface of this material. It's just not the way it is, and nobody really wants to. Everybody wants to know why and wants to go deeper. It's why anyone's attracted to this. Anyone who's got any Scorpio in their chart, for example, will naturally be attracted to this work. And anyway, Chiron is it's such a wonderful teacher, really, another symbol to help us understand the whole of ourselves and whoever we're in place to help, perhaps. Mm-hmm. You were going to give some examples, I think, or? I was, but what you said reminds me of this other point that I think really epitomizes the essence of Chiron, which is there's a calling to service with Chiron, and where the soul can be of benefit to others. Mm-hmm. And for those who are called to, because not everyone will have this calling, not every lifetime one will find this calling, but for those that do, it's a path of total transformation, because the soul has to completely go into their own stuff, and so they become available for other people. They become an agent for other people. Mm-hmm. And that reminds me of this other thing that Jeff Green taught about, which is spiritual masochism. Mm-hmm. And I've seen him talk about it in two different ways. I'll just kind of talk about both of them. One is sort of just what you would think of with that term, giving and, kind of hurting oneself through the giving, but really wanting to benefit others, but it's actually not necessarily beneficial. And that's at least what I'm taking from what I've read, and I've seen that as well. I'm martyring myself on behalf of someone else. But then there's this other quality where, and within that, it's the specific nature that is we're giving beyond our limitations. We're offering, we're serving beyond our capacity to do so, and thus we're wounding ourselves in so doing. But then there's this other quality to it where, and I've heard him speak about it, where there's nothing that needs to change about it. It's simply offering oneself for the good of others. And it's this idea of martyrdom, mm-hmm. where an individual is literally by doing this work or by being in service to other people, I'm going to be hurt. And there's nothing wrong with that necessarily. This is going to hurt me. And that hurt is also my transformation. That hurt is my healing. That hurt is my, opening. And there's no way to avoid that. And so we're benefiting other people while also it's kind of like this, the warrior or the teacher or whatever. You're going off and you're doing it, and you're going to get killed in battle. You're going to get wounded. But you wouldn't want to avoid that. But for those who are really called to that work, you can't do it and then be the same afterwards, because you're going into it and you will be completely transformed by it. And so that's a really strong.
That's interesting too, Ari, because he has Chiron in Scorpio in the 12th house. Yeah. And completely. He was everything you just said, so. Okay, so it made sense. Yeah, absolutely. And just the quality of there's nothing wrong with hurting. Like, there's nothing wrong. But to differentiate that really specifically between this unhealthy masochism of, sacrificing oneself unnecessarily so beyond one's capacity versus this is going to hurt and it's important to do it anyway. Big difference between the two. Wait a minute. Say that again. The second one was it's going to hurt.
The second one, it's going to hurt.
It's important to do it anyway.
Do it anyway. And
but what was the first one?
The first one is, doing something, it'll hurt, but it's hurting oneself in unnecessary ways. It's serving beyond one's ability to do so. And surpassing one's natural limitations. And so So it creates a wounding, but the wounding isn't like, it actually more like creates a wounding. It doesn't like bring us into it. It doesn't bring us into our pain. It doesn't create a healing. It actually just hurts us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it would be like me saying, here, let me go and fight this battle. And while I might have a very good reason or thought or cause to do so, I'm not equipped to do it. And so I might just get hurt, and I'm not really saving anyone.
Right. That's so classic. I think of, of course, it just seems like she comes up all the time in my consciousness, but Joan of Arc, even, I think, just kind of
she does.
stopping when she was done and really not needing to go that extra mile, so to speak, back into battle, and being a warrior for God at all costs, and thinking that was necessary, perhaps, or the right thing to do.
So where is her Chiron or on it?
Gosh, I don't know.
Let me just,
I might be able to get it, though, at the break.
Okay.
I don't have it at my fingertips, but I think I could get it at the break.
Okay, great.
That's a
we also have Mother Teresa that had a really strong Chiron in Pisces, and one of the delusions, actually, that she held that she was really working through in her life was this idea of suffering for God.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like people's personal suffering, and she really regarded suffering as an opportunity to know God. There's so much truth in that on one level, and that's really a Chiron in Pisces in particular. Your suffering can take you to God. I mean, that is it. But to hold the idea of suffering inherently, as that's masochistic and that's unhealthy. Suffering only takes us to God if it takes us to God, if we're choosing that. Otherwise, we're just suffering and it's unnecessary. So there can be a lot of delusion there if we're not really, clear. I have a couple other charts that we can look at here.
Okay, let's do that.
What I want to do is just kind of like touch upon some basic EA signatures here. We work with the nodes a lot, so one of the best ways to understand the planet is to look at charts where that planet is in strong relationship to the nodes. So we have on the EA message board a very long thread about Pope Francis. It's mostly a news thread, but at the very beginning of it, there's some discussion about his chart. Just note, there are 3 different occasions where a chart was given. So the third occasion was the right chart, 9 p.m. December 17th, when it's his birthday. I noticed that when I pulled this chart up. Today's his birthday, so happy birthday, Pope Francis. December 17th, 1936, 9 o'clock p.m. in Buenos Aires, Argentina. So he has Chiron in Gemini in the 12th house, conjunct the South Node in Gemini in the 12th. And the ruler of that is Mercury in Capricorn in the 7th house, which also squares Mars in Libra in the 3rd. Then he has a whole bunch of Pisces, Virgo stuff squaring the nodes. Sagittarius North Node in the 6th, conjunct the Sun. Solar return as well today. So the Chiron, and these signatures in the chart really show a soul that is speaking for the people. Gemini in the 12th. He used to ride the bus, riding transportation with the masses, Gemini in the 12th, wanting to just keep himself common with everyone else, common people. And this is where Gemini in the 12th is about being accessible to the masses, not differentiating himself. And the compassion here with this Chiron is really connecting to the common folk, not being above, not being beyond, and really having a deep compassion for all different points of view, all different perspectives. He was known as saying that, I actually have this quote up here, and it's taking a few moments to load. Okay, well, I won't. It just froze. But he was quoted as something, there we go. Jesus teaches us another way. Go out and share your testimony. Go out and interact with your brothers. Go out and share. Go out and ask. Become the Word in body as well as spirit. And to me, it really expresses that Gemini Chiron in the 12th house. Be accessible. Make the spirituality, bring it into the world. He also said that Jesus, hung out with prostitutes and lepers. And he really emphasizes bringing the religion, bringing Christ into the world, into all the crevices of it, not just separating. And so, and just to look at the nature of his consciousness, he really holds his Chiron humility in what he does. We also have a situation where, in general, Chiron in the South Node, it can represent a situation where the soul has simply unresolved wounding experiences from the past that they're here to resolve. And this might be a lifetime. It could be a lifetime of experiencing wounding after wounding after wounding, of feeling deeply vulnerable. Just as much as it can symbolize a soul who is here to really be, a martyr or a savior for other people, or to offer themselves for the benefit of the whole. Again, Pope Francis, he's done a lot of things throughout his life where he sacrificed his own, I guess the word would be like his own comfort, his own gifts, that he just wanted to keep himself simple and low for the benefit of other people. In particular, there's a time where these two people are being tortured that are part of the church. And secretly, behind the scenes, he did a lot of work to help them, and meeting with people, talking to people. But a lot of the things that he's done have been 12th house behind the scenes, communicating with different parties. And this oftentimes means being a scapegoat, 12th house, people projecting things on him, not understanding his true motives. So, Chiron in the South Node can really represent a soul that is coming into this world with this immense ability and intention to just help other people, and they're going to be hurt in the process. And if they're up for it, they're up for it, and it'll open them up more. We could also have a situation where the soul is actually pain for other people, causing wounding for other people, and perpetuating more pain in the world. Then we can have Chiron squaring the nodes. We have Chiron squaring the nodes, and for those that were born in the mid-80s, there's a group of souls with Chiron and Cancer squaring the nodal axis in Libra and Aries.
All right. Thanks again, Ari, so much. Until next time. Namaste.